welcome to the Cups of Consciousness show. I am Aleya Dao, your host. I'm a doctor of Oriental medicine, a sound healer, the author and founder of the 7 Cups of Consciousness. I have produced 9 sound healing albums and have recorded over 2,000 meditations online. I am an energy practitioner and help people shift their consciousness using their energetic fields. And this show is all about using your energetic fields to shift your consciousness, as well as exploring energetic concepts that help you create a more empowered and connected life. This episode is an energetic session that explores concepts, energetic practices, and protocols that are similar to a prayer, which help you transform particular aspects of your life. When you listen, recognize that some part of you is using your energetic fields to shift your vibration, which in turn shifts your consciousness, your behaviors, your beliefs, how you react and respond. You might even go into an altered state, so use caution if you're driving or doing something that requires a focused mind. With all of this work that I present, remember that it is your energy shifting you in your own unique way. That way you stay in control and empower with your process. So take a deep breath in, pull yourself into your line of light, and explore your inner terrain in a safe and supported space. Let's dive in. Welcome to the 7 Cups of Consciousness podcast with me, Aleya Dao, and today my guest is Radhika. She has an incredible story. She was born in India and has been immersed in the ancient wise arts her whole life and perhaps even longer than that. She is an author, a woman's coach, an integrative wellness mentor, whose work bridges Ayurvedic wisdom, yoga philosophy, and modern neuroscience to help women restore their rhythm, regulate stress, and reconnect with their intelligence inside themselves, their intuition. After years of working with C-level leaders in high-pressure environments, she had an epiphany and decided to go on a more gentle path, and now guides professionals and creatives through mentoring, seasonal wellness programs, and meditation practices rooted in nature and nervous system awareness. She was raised in India, but now lives in Colorado. Her inner and outer work create a slower, more embodied way of living. And it is an honor to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Aleya, for that beautiful introduction. And I'm honored.
Absolutely.
Happy to be here with you today.
It's so great. And can you just share with our audience a little bit about that transition of working from in the corporate world into a much slower, much more connected pace that really taps into the intuition? What was that turning point for you?
The turning point to begin the work that I'm doing right now was essentially was pretty organic. It was not something that I'd planned, though everything came together. It was the loss of my mother initially that, reignited my interest in the ancient wisdom and healing practices and alternative modalities for well-being. What happened was that she was diagnosed, unfortunately, with cancer. And at that point, I found myself heading to the bookstore to find all the books that I could read on how I could help her through that phase of life, through, natural modalities. And I got really interested through that self-study process that when I lost her, I went back to yoga and eventually got trained in a yoga teacher training, and then went on, furthering my education in that realm. And then I decided to go back and study nutrition and these healing modalities that I had self-studied. And eventually I realized that this is what I want to do for a living. And so that is how the transition happened. And then, of course, over a period of time, I started connecting the dots that I didn't come to this work really through, theory. I came through living. It also was a lived experience growing up in India. I was surrounded by yoga and this consciousness, which was really embedded in the culture. I was also introduced to it when I was, a younger in my younger time. When I was in college, my parents sent me to the oldest, what is now considered the oldest yoga school in the world. And I was going there for like summer camps and, in the weekends, spend weekends there studying, going and studying an ancient texts like Bhagavad Gita and learning Sanskrit. And all of that was part of my upbringing while I was also, studying and doing my bachelor's in psychology and management later and working in the corporate. But all these learnings that I grew up with, then later on when I started working with women, it all sort of came in together to create my offering. And, that's just how it all happened.
So that intrigued me. So when you were younger and you would go to these camps and get this incredible wise training, did you have experiences then that were like almost little mini enlightenment moments or energetically feeling your fields? Like, did you have any major shift of like, wow, this is a totally different world? Or was it so familiar because it was just part of your culture, part of the day, that it was not a big deal?
I don't think it was it was while it was part of culture, like none of my friends were doing that. They were going to like swimming camps or hiking or like sport related different outdoor camps and
Yeah.
things like that. So I would always have an interest I always had this part of me which was like I didn't have vocabulary for it. Like, what is touching my soul? Or like, what is this inner guidance or my intuition telling me? I would feel very peaceful and safe. Like my nervous system would feel really calm in these spaces. And like I said, I wasn't aware. It was very unconscious. Now I have a vocabulary and understand what was happening in my nervous system, in my brain, in my body, in my mind. But I remember viscerally, like, how that food made me feel, the Ayurvedic food. Or I remember how when I moved and what was the connection happening with my breath and my body. And that stayed with me when I then started practicing in studios and I would see there was like music on when you're practicing and sometimes the music is jarring or the practice is so fast paced like the vinyasa and it like takes you away from the present moment. So I was discerning then where I would practice and now I've become even more discerning to the point that I don't know if I can energetically take in everything. Very sensitive about what I'm taking in energetically, but I think the roots of that or the foundation of that was birthed when I was really young. But I had this natural inclination towards it. Like I was leaning towards it. I didn't see my friends doing that, who also grew up in the same, culture. I think I stood out in like what I was taking in from the beginning. So I'm
Interesting.
just
And
grateful.
when you were younger with all of these skill sets, did your friends kind of come to you and ask for counsel? Did you kind of find yourself in this natural counsel position as a child?
For sure. Yeah. I was like, why is everyone coming and sharing, their secrets with me or they're sharing, what next? So yes, that would happen a lot for sure. I was always like this person who's holding space
Mhm.
for everyone. So yeah, that happened a lot.
That's so intriguing because before our podcast today, and you and I have never met before, this is our
Mhm.
first time that we get to connect with each other.
Right.
And I was tuning into your energy and I felt this, it was like this deep in being in your presence, just being in your field, just reading about you had the all of the eyes like inside me. I felt all my eyes going in and I started questioning like, well, how am I connected to myself? And how is my nutrition? And how is my digestion? And how is my rhythm in life? And I not normally do I feel that. Usually it's like the eyes outside of what's going on with this person. And so for you in your field, you hold this incredibly safe container that creates this energetic phenomenon inside people where they bring their eyes inside.
Mm.
And from my perspective, we can only shift what we're aware of. And so you help people become more aware of what's going on inside them so that they can start working with their gut biome and their rhythm and what they're listening to. And so, in all of the work that you've been doing with women, there is something that kind of intrigues me. And I'm wondering, with so many people, so many women in particular, who kind of look successful on the
Mhm.
outside
Yeah.
and yet feel exhausted inside, from your perspective, what's happening to their nervous system and maybe even at a deeper soul level when depletion becomes so normalized and we stop questioning it, like, well, I just have to get through the day, I just have to keep pushing. Have you noticed that with women, that like core exhaustion, and your insights, your reflections, your practices that you might have in your work with people?
Yeah, you said something very beautiful. Thank you for tuning into my energy. And I think that's a big, I think for anyone who's doing this work, to start from like building self-awareness, because you can't be like having someone holding your hand all the time. And once you build that muscle of self-awareness, then it's so easy to tune into what is it that you desire at this point, or what is happening to your body. And I think what you mentioned about women, I see that, I've seen that in my clients, myself included, my friends, um, that there is this tendency to overfunction. And it's also, embedded. I always say it's embedded in our psyche from so many years, ancestors, and we are the ancestors now. So it's time that we change that shift, make that shift. Is that patriarchal mindset of always, not just for women, even for men, like it's always like it's the culture that we always have to keep doing,
Mm-hmm.
and that is how we improve ourselves, or that is how we adapt our emotions or transition, whereas the medicine actually is in doing less. Right. So only in those spaces can we then realize what is it that we need, not what others are telling us to do. So I think what I notice in my clients is that they are scared of being in those pauses or in that space of non-doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like they want homework even in the weekend, like some prompts yes, I mean, those are useful, but I feel like sometimes you have to just do nothing.
Yeah.
And nobody says that. Of course, it's a very privileged place to be, to
Mm-hmm.
not do anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if you are in a place of position and power, and you're functioning in corporate environment, or you're doing something for yourself, your professional, personal life goals, I feel like that you have personal life goals of, optimizing your well-being. I feel like beginning from a place of doing less,
Mm-hmm.
and then seeing what is coming from your heart, not like a cognitive goal, but like what is it that's coming from the place in the gut, and like in Japanese, they say the hara, accessing your hara and your heart, and then like articulating what is it that I actually really need. A lot of clients come to me like they want to reduce their body fat, or they want to adopt a new lifestyle where it's a certain diet that will help their hormones. Or it could be also a life goal of like, adding some new habits. So I always ask them to begin from their heart. Like, what is it that you really, really want? And I think when you said about like the exhaustion, which is like burnout, I feel like a lot of times women or anyone going through it can see that as a failure. But I think it's just beginning from that place of compassion, that this is not a personal failure, but this is just, it's going to take time. This is something that ancestrally we have been driven to, especially as women. We're always the nurturers, the ones who are doing for everyone. So it's once we become aware of that and begin from a place of compassion and grace, and then realizing that this, if it becomes chronic, then we will be in survival mode, and that's when the amygdala becomes dominant. Your prefrontal cortex is fatigued, and then you're constantly living in that place of vigilance, and you're moving away and away and away from your inner desires. Like, what is it that you really want? So I think just sometimes understanding cognitively what is happening, scientifically what is happening, is easier than for my clients and for most people to then understand, okay, this is what it's happening. So this is not in alignment with where I want to be. So what can I do?
Right. It's
And
like we're not listening to the rhythm of the body, which you talk about a lot.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I wonder if the burnout is us being in a rhythm that our society holds, and that rhythm, societal rhythm, creates the burnout. And you talk a lot about the seasons. And so like right now we're in the winter, we're going to be going into the spring. Um, and you have a whole program that you walk people through of how to live seasonally. And so what are some of the practices that people could do in the wintertime to help kind of nurture their rhythm, their right rhythm back into being?
Yeah, so I use Ayurveda as a lens to help us, live in the cadence with alignment of the cadence of the seasons, because we are evolved as cyclical beings. We live in cycles, the day and night, and the seasonal. And it's when we ignore these rhythms, these natural rhythms, whether it's seasonal, hormonal for women, it creates an internal conflict. And so Ayurveda teaches us that when we live against nature and we are not staying, in congruence with what's happening in nature, that's when the imbalance can come in. And that just doesn't just deplete us physically, but also emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, science also supports that now that, when you have your circadian rhythms are disrupted, there is hormonal dysregulation, your sleep is affected, you have more inflammation. So when I begin by sharing this, I don't really usually share, like, okay, just do this. I try and bring in the scientific always, because that's when people are like, okay, yeah, I want to listen. So in Ayurveda, there are like three principles that I use for explaining, whether it's seasonal living or just like how we can live more in alignment with nature. And you spoke about winter, and I love that example. So one of the principles is like increases like, and that is um, when we have more cold and we ingest more cold in our body, that's going to create more cold. Do we want that? In winter we don't. And so one thing I see, like, and I always say this, if there's one thing you can take away after listening to this podcast, is that if you have ice water throughout the year, not just in winter, stop having that, because what is the ice doing? It's depleting your digestive fire, which is known as agni. And we have been evolved as our digestive systems have evolved as being um moist, and they require this fire
Mm-hmm.
to help us assimilate our nutrients and make our digestion optimal. And so when we are starting our food with ice water, what is that doing? So the like increases like. So then the other principle in Ayurveda is opposites create balance. So then have hot water, and that will create balance. More so in winter, we need that, right? So I just feel like sometimes it's so simple. Like, it's cold outside. Do I really need to create more cold in my body? No. And then again, it's seasonally, talking about winter, what is happening outside? Just look outside in the window, which is what I'm doing right now. Um, the leaves have fallen. The nature is in hibernation, right? So what is it that you want to do? Like, we say the Gregorian calendar is telling us it's a new year, set your intentions, let's just go. No, but we're still in winter. So there is a balance. Yes, you can feel into the new energy of the new year, but really that begins in spring when everything is growing. So just looking at that, and then you might be still feeling a little depleted from the holidays, and you would be telling yourself or shaming yourself, no, no, it's the new year. I need to set up a vision board. I need to set up new goals. I need to, like, do this, do that. But I'm feeling so depleted. So honor that. That's what nature is also telling us. And and then the third principle in Ayurveda is that the microcosm, reflects the macrocosm, and vice versa. So what happens in the outer world is also what's happening within us. So seasonal shifts are going to create mood changes. It's going to affect our digestion, our energy. So that is why it's important to follow what's happening in the macro level and create our daily rhythms around that. And the other thing I also say is that all of this to say that what's happening in the collective, not just in nature, but in general, is also going to affect us, and vice versa. So what is it that we can do, whatever we can do for ourselves is also going to affect the collective consciousness and whatever is happening in the world that you want to shift. So it's not like we are isolated from what's happening. It's affecting each and every one of us. So when we live in rhythm with the nature cycles and the way we start our day, living according to seasons, living according to day and night cycles, we return to a place of presence and coherence. And then whoever we interact with is also feeling that.
It's like that positive ripple. I talk a lot about empathic sensitivity. And when we're an empath, we have the sensitivity to live in rhythm. And then when we're living in rhythm, we create this positive empathic plume in our field that possibly impacts hundreds of thousands or more. And
right.
So, yeah, you're coaching people.
For sure. And as an empath, I would say that also you have to be aware that you don't get too depleted as well. So you have to keep honoring that as well.
Yeah. I kind of think of it like the more awakened and aware we become, the more sensitive we become.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we're sensitive, we have to gather new tools, which is what you're providing of like, okay, how do you live in balance when you're super sensitive, living in rhythm with the seasons?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And also ritual. You talk a lot about ritual, and I love how you introduce ritual and embody ritual, that it's not just another thing to do. It's
Mm-hmm.
tied in with your intuition. And can you just speak a little bit about ritual? Because you also wrote a book that's going to be coming out at the end of this year on the rituals of life and living from that connected place.
Yeah. So the book is called Radiant Rituals, and I talk about rituals from the place of, how can you live, the premises, how can you live an unstoppable life, but from a place of flow and ease and resilience. And so these rituals are encapsulated across physical rituals that will help with your physical wellness, energetic, emotional well-being, and emotional and mental well-being, and energetic well-being. So having said that, I distinguish rituals from habits. Habits being, because there is always like this thin line, like what is the difference between habits and ritual? Habit is something that, is something that you do. Sometimes it's unconscious, sometimes it's conscious, but a ritual is something that you actually enter, and you create sacredness. There is a sense of devotion around it because you're making it your own. It's not rigid. Habits could be you've read a book, you've heard someone talking about morning habits or something, and it's you just like trying to take it and make it and you put it in your add it in your lifestyle.
Your routine. It's like routine versus ritual.
Right. And ritual is something, yes, you can get inspired. You're listening to me and I talk about Ayurvedic Dinacharya, which are daily rituals. You get up in the morning and take care of your senses. And I share a lot about how you can do that. And you pick maybe one of that and you create a ritual around it, which is like, it's going to happen from a place of reverence because you're taking care of your body because you want to. You create a time around it. It's almost like creating like this special um, time where it becomes something that you look forward to. So it sticks. And it's always something that carries an intention, like why are you doing it? And then it becomes a place where it's bringing meaning and it's again bringing presence. And so whether you're lighting a candle and doing a great gratitude practice, or you're doing your meditation practice and a special altar and you're lighting an incense, or you are also not really caught in the fact that this has to be done at this particular time. I mean, that's ideal. But having that grace and compassion again, that yes, I'm a busy mother and I have a lot of things to do. So I'm going to come back to it if it didn't happen today. And so, the ease and accessibility about it is what makes it a little bit more conscious, the ritual, that it creates, it helps you create this sort of commitment to yourself that you're going to come back to it.
Beautiful. I also think about ritual, and I've noticed people's energy fields, their spaces of their home, where they navigate. When we are immersed in our own ritual of taking that sacred time that you talk about, it creates a layered vibrational dimensional reality that we then live in. And there's a depth and a texture and like a magic and a shimmer and a golden energy, because it also has that clean vibrance that I think ritual does create. And so I love that you speak about it, because it's such a simple practice that women, everyone could do in that inner world with the eyes closed, maybe even while brushing teeth or taking a shower. It's like we could bring ritual into our routines and make them sacred.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even like when you're cooking a meal, creating a ritual around that.
Absolutely. Before we eat, right? Everything, there can be ritual. So, in the book, what is it that got you most excited in terms of the journey, the insights, the exploration, what you share with people? What kind of comes top of mind when you think about this book that's getting launched like a baby into the world at the end of the year?
Yeah, I think if, other than what I've already mentioned, I think I realized when the editor mentioned that this would be a great book for someone to keep by their bedside as a guidebook if they're especially going through any kind of transition in their life. So whether it's a transition from, identity shift, a career shift, you're moving, uh, your whole life to another city or state or country even, or it's like a transition of grief, relationship, loss of a loved one, divorce. And so I think that's something that was missing when I went through these transitions. So I feel like I wrote this book for myself when I was writing it. I was going through a transition, I was going through a divorce. And so it's that is the piece that got me really excited. It was almost like an alchemy for me, a healing, if you will, because I was writing to that version of me that probably needed to hear this or live with these tools. And I didn't realize that I had these access to all of this, but it was coming from a place of like lived experience.
Yeah.
So I think that really helped me sort of put it all together. So it's basically for anyone who has, seems that who senses that effort is not just effort. Putting effort is no longer the answer. It's for anyone, like I said, moving through transitions, anyone navigating a different season of life. It's also for those who are interested in, like, who are drawn to ancient wisdoms. Like I talk about yoga philosophy, I bring in inspiration from texts like Bhagavad Gita and also Ayurveda. So they want that inspiration, but it's translated into a way that it can be accessed in our modern life. And so, like things like intuition and science and structure and flow and taking action, but also with periods of rest and pause. So, for anyone who's looking at living more in alignment with seasons, with inner regulation, energy management, without really feeling the need to fix or optimize anything, but just the book will help you just get inspiration on knowing that you're exactly where you are, but here are some tools to just make you feel even more in your body, in your mind, in your soul.
And that is very, I want to say, rare. There's a lot out there with lots of teachers and guidance and how to's where people know it with their mind, but they haven't lived it with their heart. And then they haven't taken the time to figure out all of those words that connect with the how did I live this in the core of my being and my heart, and all of the raw truth of what happens in our heart when we go through a time of challenge. And so this book has a resonance of incredible authority, authenticity, and embodiment, which then positively, empathically impacts the reader. And so, and the other pearl that you again bring forth that you've talked about is that simpleness and that stillness. And a true master knows the question to ask. And in your book, I can feel these beautiful, wise questions that help somebody awaken to something that they had never even looked at in that lens. So it just feels like precious, amazing. Can't wait to get it. And are you doing pre-orders on Amazon or with
Yeah,
Shambhala?
not yet, but the time come in a few months. which then, yeah, I will share with you. But yeah, you beautifully said that. It seems like you know what is there in the book, because there, in every chapter, there is like radiant reflections, is what we are calling it. And so there are inquiries and questions for the reader to sort of, just get into that space of inner knowing.
And it comes from such a compassionate place because you've walked it. There's,
Yes. So I know, so there are sections where I'm like, okay, these are the rituals and these are the inspiration, but when shit hits the fan, I know you can't do this all because I've been there. So maybe just do this one thing.
Right. Just feel the softness of the sheets. Right. Like, that's all I can do today.
Exactly. That's a great sensory exercise too.
Beautiful. Well, if there was one little pearl that you could share with our listeners, that might support them and create some curiosity, maybe even a question, because you have that gift. What is one last little pearl that you would like to share before we complete?
There's so many, but I think I would say one thing that I want to do more of as well this year, and I've written about it in my book. It's this practice, you might have heard of it. It's called Pratyahara, which is one of the inner limbs in yoga philosophy. It talks about turning inward, retreating from life. It's like there's an example of how the total, kind of when it retreats into rest, how it's like moving into its cocoon and it's not aware of what's happening outside. And so I feel like there is so much noise when we are trying to, create those spaces of rest for ourselves. There is, whether it's social media or it's the news or what's happening in the world. I'm not saying we should not be aware of what's happening, but creating spaces like whether when you're driving, can you drive without stimulation? Because I have this conscious way of, I always want to learn. That's one of my values, love for learning. And so I would want to listen to a podcast, or I want to go for a walk. I'm listening to music. Yeah. And so I feel like if we can practice withdrawing from all of this noise for moments, it's so nourishing. And that is how also we create boundaries between technology. We're allowing moments of silence. We are creating these pauses between transition periods, whether it's between work or meeting our loved ones. And also like eating without multitasking, like just creating those micro withdrawals from, reducing the dopamine overload and allowing the nervous system to recalibrate in those spaces. And not only that it's also like always listening to this input from other people is taking us away from what is it that we want or what is coming up in our mind. What are we like shutting down? So just getting close to that place. So our senses are not constantly hijacked. Our intuition is audible again.
It's almost like saying to yourself, have I had enough silence today?
Yes.
Right? Did I drink enough water? Did I have enough silence? And silence, I think, is one of the most powerful medicines.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, sharing your wisdom, being raw, real, and sharing your tools as well, inspiring people and inviting them to be curious of looking through a different lens as we journey into a new year.
Thank you so much, Aleya, for your beautiful questions. I really enjoyed being here with you today.
Thank you. It was an honor. Bye. Bye, everyone. Thanks so much for listening. Stay tuned. You have been listening to the Cups of Consciousness show with me, Aleya Dao. Receive a free month of the Cups of Consciousness. Go to 7cupsofconsciousness.com. When you get your free month, you will get 5 cups a week for 4 weeks. You'll also receive access to a live Tall Cup of Consciousness session. Feel free to review the show. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time. Aho.